Hi there, this is Chris from MoneyHub, and this video looks at how to make a successful travel insurance claim. So there's lots of online reviews from various policies, various insurers saying I couldn't make a claim, it was rejected, a whole bunch of drama, and basically we wanted to put out something which walks people through it. And this guide, which I'm referring to from MoneyHub, is linked in the video description below. But now I'm going to walk you through it and just sort of talk about the finer points and some must-know things and facts that you can take on board when you're looking for insurance or if you're planning to make a claim or both. So, first of all, I just want to say that it doesn't take long to buy travel insurance. It's a very fast process. Put in the times that you're away, you put in your ages, etc., your destination, and then it's pretty much that's the price. And so it's very quick to buy. But at the same time, we know from what we've been reading, what we hear is that claims being paid can be very time consuming and frustrating. There's lots of document requests, there's lots of pushback sometimes if something's not clear. There's always articles in the media about the fact that travel insurance claims have been denied. So we know that people complain primarily, when they get rejected or they don't get what they want. And, there's also some commentary around delays in decision making and approvals and responding to questions. But the biggest problem is when insurers don't pay out, and they're not paying out primarily because the claim isn't part of the policy. So I'm going to go through everything. I just want to make these comments up front because it's really important. We've published this to sort of let you know what you need to do to avoid the hassle and frustration of claiming. And usually, of course, I'll say this up front, is that when you're making these claims, it's going to be after your trip. Most insurers, unless your trip's a very long trip, most insurers will deduct the excess, i.e., the cost per claim, and then they'll pay it into your bank account. But of course, it's no surprise that if you had, say, a claim in January or some sort of event in January, maybe a cancelled flight, you had to book into a hotel last minute, it could still be June and you're still chasing that. That's not a derogatory comment around any insurer. It's just the fact that it takes two people to get over the line, i.e., the insurer and yourself. And it's a lot of ping pong for many insurers, not all, of course. And so I just wanted to make that clear as well, that it's not just an instant claim and payout process. There is usually a bit of back and forth with emails and forms and things like that. So this guide's our first edition. Of course, we're updating it. This video is based on our guide, as I previously said. And if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, because it really helps us make our guides as comprehensive as possible. So I just want to sort of make a starting comment here. That's in regards to making sure you understand, what your policy covers. Because the problem is there's so much in it, and this is just one example. It's from Covermore, and look at the size of it. It is absolutely enormous. And who is going to read that? Well, we do our best when we compare everything. Okay, so while it's only 35 pages, it's the amount of content and sort of everything in there. And then surprise, surprise, sometimes this is not specific to Covermore. There'll be a claim, and then oh, this wasn't covered, or oh, no. And so people, because travel is so varied and there's so many things that can go wrong, you'd think, I buy a travel insurance, am I covered? Yes, otherwise why would I buy it? And then you find out that you're not. So we just want to make sense of all this by sort of giving the right information and making sure we're comprehensive. But at the same time, you always need to read your policy. So that is a very critical point, uh, because if you don't know what you've bought, or you don't know what you're buying, then it's going to be very difficult to claim on it later on. So please read it through. We've got lots of videos you can see on YouTube here that we've gone through, and we've talked about policies, we've highlighted things. We really want to do that because it makes it easier. We know that it's quite overwhelming to, have to go through these things, but we want to make it more transparent. So we're there, of course, making commentary. We're not giving any travel insurance advice, but we just want people to dip their toes in and really make an effort, to understand what they're buying. And I've made it very clear here. I'm saying claims usually get rejected because people don't read the policy. They think they're covered and they find out they're not, which is never a good outcome. Now, I don't want to go into real tragic or sad cases that I read in the New Zealand media because they're people, you might know them. But yeah, sometimes you'll have someone who'll get a policy, maybe the medical covers up to $250,000, and then they fall off a volcano or something in the USA or something like that. Maybe not the USA, but somewhere, and it's $1 million of medical. And so then is a massive shortfall. People don't insure, enough, or they don't know what they're covered for. They just think travel insurance. So please, you have to read these policies. I know they're large, but I can't emphasize that enough. There's the tower one, you know, there's ones from NIB. There's all sorts of ones. So I want to make that clear that it's going to come down to just reading a policy. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. So I've covered off, to understand your policy, which is read it and then declare all pre-existing conditions. This, of course, won't apply to everybody, but you do have to sort of know what you have, and you need to flag it with the insurer, because if a claim comes in, they will make sure that they are protected themselves. These costs are very high. You're paying perhaps $300 for a policy, and maybe your medical bills later on are $50,000. So they are in the business of going through everything. So if you haven't declared, then that's going to be a problem, and you don't want to be denied. It's pointless to buy an insurance policy if you haven't declared. Declared your pre-existing conditions. Now, to get an understanding of the exclusions, I think it's best probably just to go through a policy in summary to get a general understanding so that Let's just do that right now. So for this, I've used Tower's policy, and this is their policy as of June 2023, but of course it's subject to change at any time. So this is excluding, basically everything which you can imagine that they don't want to cover. And it's things like war, it's things like, warlike operations, civil war, rebellions, civil unrest, all sorts of that. Um, so within that, they also have subsections. So actually, a civil unrest, well, if it's in the Pacific Islands, then that's different. So there's all sorts of things you need to be aware of. So acts of terrorism, those won't be covered if you have to make a claim because of that. Nuclear weapons, some sort of, pandemic, or some sort of epidemic. So that's really, really important. And also the threat of one. So if borders start being closed down or anything like that, this is actually, it's very important to read this stuff because people just don't know. And then looking at things like, nuclear again, biological weapons, and then it gets into actually some sort of more realistic stuff for the wider population, and that would be your deliberate or reckless acts and your unlawful acts. So if you've, deliberately damaged property or something like that, you deliberately throw your passport into the sea or something like that, anything like that, miss a flight deliberately or anything, then you're not going to be covered. And then anyone who's lawfully within your accommodation premises, so if they cause damage, then that's also going to be not covered. And then any travel within New Zealand, unless it's part of your New Zealand journey, say you're connecting from Christchurch to Auckland up to Los Angeles, then that would be fine. But something like that. And then if safe travel, which is the New Zealand government's recommend travel advisory, that you don't travel to a country, and if that's been issued and you still travel there, then that's going to be excluded. And then, occupations involving dangerous or unusual work, that's quite vague, but, that would be interpreted. Usually can't really get these general policies for work anyway, but, if you're out on a project or something, but it's worth, checking with the insurer, of course, before you buy any policy. And then anything to do with elective or cosmetic surgery, the list goes on. And then, you know, claims that have to do with skiing or snowboarding outside of ski resort boundaries, and then diving underwater using artificial breathing apparatus. I mean, these are very specific. Mountain or rock climbing, professional sport, flying, tow gliding, hang gliding, professional sport, and then yachting that's 25 miles or more from the mainland. Anything to do with a rodeo, hunting, and then extreme versions of any sport. So that's also subject to interpretation. Then it goes into pregnancy or childbirth, except for, within the first 20 weeks. We've got a separate guide and videos to that. Things look a domestic animal, things, STDs, self-inflicted illnesses or injury, drugs, all sorts of things. You're under the influence of intoxicated liquor and drugs, or you ride a moped or motorcycle where the engine capacity is more than, say, 200 cc, or without a helmet. At the same time, you don't have a license, and then anything to do with consequential loss loss of enjoyment you're not going to be covered for. And then traveling against the advice of a medical practitioner, say your GP says don't travel, you still travel, then the policy is void, and you're traveling with the intention of getting treated for medical things overseas. And that's pretty much that list there. So that's why it's really important to read that, and it'll be under the exclusions, or what we don't cover. So just search your policy and then, form an understanding from that. It's not easy, but I do need to make it clear that, that is really important to understand. So what do you do if you actually need to claim? And this is normal. Many people claim on insurance. It's not scary, but you just have to know the process. So the first thing to do is notify the insurer. So they're going to respond to you, and most of them have 24/7 call centers. So I've done this myself. Something's happened a long time ago. Phone them up, and someone picks up. Usually Australia, because it's most New Zealand policies have some sort of Australian a team for whatever reason, and then you talk it through with them, and then they tell you what to do. That could be get documents, that could be file a police report, that could be send this, send that. You need to respond to what they do. You're not going to get some sort of personal concierge step in and do it all for you. That's why it can be a bit limiting if you're under some sort of medical treatment. But this is the consequence of having travel insurance. You do need to make an effort to sort it all out, and keep following them. So the first step is follow what they say. And then, second step here is document everything. So make sure that you save all your receipts, your medical reports, police reports, all sorts of things like that, and then follow the rules. So whatever the insurer has said, please follow it. So if you need to report a theft, then you've got to do that within 24 hours if that's what they've said. And if it's medical treatment, you've got to get some sort of estimation, send it to the insurer, and get them to approve it. This is where it gets tricky, but it from the insurer's side, and we're not siding with anyone, and like, we're not saying pros and cons here, but for them, possibly, say you pay $200 for a policy, and you're asking them to, say, pay for 30, 40, $50,000 in medical treatment, they need to approve it first. This is the nature of travel insurance. It's fine for small claims, but of course things get stressful when they're for the large amounts. And then complete the claim forms. You have to be thoroughly in that. So be aware that you have to be completely honest and completely factual, and make sure that when you send it. So keep a record. You may get a response saying we will process this within 5 days, or we'll get back to you within 10 working days. So just be aware that there have been delays, and you can read about that in the media. But it's very critical to know that you do need to submit things thoroughly to avoid back and forth if you haven't filled something out completely, or it's not complete. And then submit the supporting documentation. So anything else you need, these police reports, medical reports, receipts, you bought something replace what you lost, had stolen, etc., then provide that. And then I think this is really important. Stay patient and persistent. Now, things can drag on. It's probably what I've been seeing, and I think this is commonly sort of known in the industry, is that lots of people left the travel insurance industry during COVID, and now, of course, COVID's long, gone. It's hard to kind of recruit back in. So things are taking a little bit longer to process, and so you just have to stay patient, stay persistent, make sure you keep following up, and if they say to do something, then you have to do it. You can't just sit on that. It's not going to be done for you. So the onus is on you to make sure it sort of gets done. And then finally, this is in rare situations, but if you feel as if it's dragging out, you feel as if you haven't been properly assessed, and it's just not really sort of happening for you in the way that you expected, then you can talk to a lawyer if you wanted to, if the claim's significant. You can also, talk to an insurance, a claim specialist. These are very sort of remote possibilities in terms of how often you need to do this. I think the process for most people, from what we see and from our research, is that you stay persistent and you stay patient, and then you get the claim processed or it gets rejected, which I'll get to in the next thing. So if your claim is denied, and then but it's not so much hiring someone to chase it at this point. We put that in there just for completeness. So that brings me to the point I referenced here. So what are my options if the claim's denied? This is where things get tricky, because claims do get denied and it's not fair and it's not correct, and so there are challenges in them, and we've linked to an article here, and it happens quite often. I mean, not quite often as if it's every second claim, but it's certainly, because the nature of travel insurance is subjective with regards to a whole bunch of factors, then insurers can sometimes get it wrong. Also, people can claim many times for things they're not entitled to claim for. So it certainly goes both ways. So the first thing to do if you have been rejected is please review the decision and explain, and actually, sorry, and read the reason. So this reason has to be, thoroughly put together. It can't just be like, we're not going to pay. And you need to understand, what's caused the claim to be denied and which part of the policy actually denies it. So if that's something which you accept, then that's the end of it. You're not going to get, any further money from them or any money at all. But if you don't think that's right and you say, no, this is not fair on the policy says this, you've interpreted it that way, that's not right, then the next step is to appeal the decision. So you can totally do that, and you write your letter to the insurer, say exactly why you think it's incorrect, and you have to provide possibly additional evidence if you think that will support. It really comes down to what you're claiming and what the facts are. And then if that's denied, then you can go to we can go to the ombudsman, and at the same time you can also go, if it's not a large amount, you can go to the disputes tribunal, but we would start with the ombudsman because that shows it's going to go through the proper process. And some of these cases in the past have all gone through that, and the ombudsman has found in some cases that yes, an insurer is actually liable. Sometimes they find the insurer is not liable. That's fine. That's the end of it. You can also go to a dispute, but it's likely to end there. So that really is the process. So I think it can be all avoided by just knowing what's in your policy and making sure that your claim, within its limits. But at the same time, this is, this needs to be out there because people really don't know what to do. And of course, the insurer isn't overly generous with telling people what to do should their claims be denied. Finally, some frequently asked questions. We want people just really understand, how travel insurance works. And so in this case, I'm buying it for the first time and don't want to have a claim rejected. What do I need to know? This is really just a summary of our whole video here and also the guide. Just be proactive and ensure you've got the right coverage. Save the policy information so you have it on your phone, you have it printed out, and make sure that as soon as something happens, or it's likely to happen, that you're feeling sick, you're going to get like go to hospital or something like that, make sure you call the insurer to let them know, and then double check the advisories. Most people from New Zealand don't travel anywhere which is not safe to do so, but just check if you are going to anywhere which might, be on the red list. And then policy extensions. So if you do decide to extend your trip, make sure that your travel insurance policy is, is extended too, and make sure that you don't run foul of any like country day limits or anything like that, or any trip duration or something like that, because that can catch people out. So what is the usual time frame? I mean, it's hard to know because there's so much changed in the industry. We've said uh, 10 to 15 business days to review and to respond. It could be longer, it could be a lot shorter. It really just depends. And this is at the claims process. Like, this isn't at the notifying stage. This is actually when you've got a claim to make. And then the second question, sort of related, well, is there a deadline to file? The answer is yes. That's going to depend on your policy, but you just have to be proactive. Don't let it drag. If you do need to make a claim, get onto it straight away. Just don't let it sort of hang there. And then, what if my travel insurance claim is rejected due to an error on the claim form? You can correct that. You can say, actually, I made a mistake. Sorry, here's the right information. Of course, it really helps to double check everything first, but that is your right to do so. And that won't, the fact that you're resubmitting won't invalidate the policy or anything like that. And then, how does the excess work? So this is a great question that a lot of people ask. The answer is it's normally deducted from your claim. So, for example, if your excess is $300 and you make a claim for, say, a stolen wallet and a stolen handbag, and some things, and actually the bag itself for, say, $1,000, then you'll be paid $700 pending that claim being approved, because the $300 is taken out, and that's what the insurer takes to kind of process the claim. People ask, well, that seems unfair if I already paid for a policy. That is the nature of excess. You can, of course, go down to a $0 excess. You just have to pay more for the policy. So that really just comes down to what you want to spend, and if that's the right sort of decision for you. And then, what if I don't have all the necessary documentation for my claim? Really, you just have to contact the insurer there. Some things aren't, easy to get. And so, you just have to talk to the insurer and see what, happens. And then, can I file the travel insurance claim if I've cancelled my trip? It really just depends on what your cover is. So some some travel insurance will cover cancellation costs, and some won't. And personal reasons could be could be anything. So you really just have to talk to the insurer and understand what's covered, because some policies will be specific and some you have to ask, and this is why it becomes complicated when trying to compare it. And then finally, I'll just quickly go through the last of these. So, do I need to inform my insurer about a minor incident even if I don't plan to claim on it? It does seem unnecessary, and it's not going to trigger anything, that's unfavorable to you. But the general accepted good practice would be to notify them, just in case it becomes part of a claim later on, and you need to know that that was sort of raised if like a week or like 2 weeks before. It's helpful for the insurer. So if there is some loss to you or some inconvenience, you should notify them, and even if you don't plan to actually make a claim from it. So that's worth knowing. And then, how can I prove the value of the personal belongings stolen or lost during the trip? That is a great question. That's often comes up. A lot of people don't keep receipts. Stuff is old, but you might need to go back into your bank statements, or even just show photos of you with the item. And there's always options there. So just be aware that they'll kind of explain to you what you need to show. And then, what do I do if my insurer is not responding to my claim? Then you have to just follow up. It's phone, it's social media messages. Get them on Facebook, get them on a review site. Online reviews seem to be highly engaging when it's a negative thing is posted. and keep a record of everything, because you need to, they need to know what you've sent them. You need to know what, you've sent them for your own records, just to keep on top of it. So just be proactive and just keep the conversation going, even if it feels one way sometimes. And then who pays for the medical costs up front? Is it going to be the insurer? Is it going to be me? So this really depends on the insurer as well as the situation. Minor things you can expect to pay for yourself. You're not going to get the insurer to direct credit like a hospital or a clinic. But for some stuff, of course, it's so significantly expensive that you'd expect the insurer to step in first. So you're going to have to contact the insurer and see what they do. There's so many different variables here that we can't even answer that with any. It's either going to be you or it's going to be them, and it just depends on the situation, which of course is not that helpful, but that is the fact of it. And then who pays for the accommodation or alternative travel arrangements in case of any flight cancellations or delays? That's quite a common claim, and generally it's you that pays it up front, which is kind of annoying, because you have to put it on your credit card, and it's just something else to sort of be aware of. But it is definitely, it's very rare that a travel insurer would step in unless it was some massive event, but very unlikely. So yes, that is you. I just want to leave it there because I know this has been quite a long video, but I think it's really important just to get an understanding. And please don't be afraid to read your policy. Make notes within it, print it out, highlight stuff, just annotate it to get an understanding, because it is going to make the difference should you claim. And then if you're comfortable with the policy, then from time to time, if you're going away in the future, you can just buy a new one and know that you're comfortable with it. But it really starts with just trying to get as comfortable and as knowledgeable as it uh, by reading it. And that's what we want people to do. And that way, the claims will be much more successful because you're much more informed. So what your limits are, and whether or not you're actually eligible. So thanks very much for watching. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. We're bringing out lots of guides and lots of videos on travel insurance, trying to sort of make sense of it all for everybody. So thank you very much for watching, and best of luck with your travels.